Let's reset what's going on with Trump attorney Michael Cohen. We learned last week, because of initially tweets from Stormy Daniels' attorney, Michael Avenatti, we learned that Michael Cohen, through a shell company called Essential Consultants, was the recipient of more than $1 million that we know of specifically, and allegedly of more than $4 million of basically influence money. $600,000 from AT&T, $1.2 million from Swiss pharmaceutical company Novartis, reportedly $500,000 from a Putin-connected Russian business owner billionaire, and allegedly many, many other transfers of money. And supposedly the reason that these companies were paying Michael Cohen's consulting firm was for insights into the Trump administration. And of course, the timing was very suspect. The timing of the AT&T money, $600,000, not $200,000 as originally reported, coincided with not only the repeal of net neutrality by the Trump FCC, but also with the fact that AT&T was trying to merge with Time Warner. The Washington Post has now obtained internal AT&T documents, meaning this is what AT&T wrote internally about the real reasons why they were paying money to Michael Cohen. And the internal documents from AT&T indicate that hiring Michael Cohen was done to help with the Time Warner merger. AT&T hired the personal attorney of the President of the United States to provide advice about a merger which Trump's own Department of Justice would be adjudicating. So this is a story about corruption fundamentally. It should not be a partisan story because corruption cuts both ways, much like freedom of the press. And it can be very tempting to look the other way when the lack of press freedom or of corrosive corruption is helping your side. But that's how we end up screwing ourselves in the long run. And this is quickly growing to the level of, I don't know, to pick an example, the corruption during the presidency of Ulysses S. Grant, which was considered huge, right? It included Black Friday. It included a major railroad scam. It included the whiskey ring, pond scum corruption and cronyism. What we are seeing now under the Trump administration in terms of corruption and cronyism is rising above and beyond even what we saw under President Ulysses S. Grant. And this is circumstantially evidence of bribery, right? The AT&T hiring of Michael Cohen, Novartis, the other companies we're learning about. And it's not about bribery, the crime, yet, but it is deduced evidence of intent to bribe and receive bribes, and it has to be looked into. And Americans should be united on this. They're not. And that is really one of the scariest things that we're seeing about the looking the other way on Trump-Russia, looking the other way on the cronyism, looking the other way on the broader bamboozling that has taken place, because this has every indication of being pay to play, which, by the way, Trump said was a reason not to vote for Hillary, selling access directly or indirectly, explicitly or implicitly to the President of the United States. And we only have the information so far about some of the more than $4 million that supposedly ran through this one company of Cohen's, Essential Consultants. I would be willing to bet that there is much more, and I hope that we learn about it soon. And it's important, I mentioned legally, right? Some will say, okay, AT&T paid Cohen to help get the merger approved. Trump hates CNN, owned by Time Warner. Trump opposed the deal anyway. Is it still illegal? Is it still bribery, even if it wasn't successful bribery? And the answer from legal experts is yes. The offer of a quid pro quo is what makes it bribery. Taking money to help get a merger through, getting screwed because Trump's Justice Department ended up opposing it, doesn't excuse the bribery. We could call it stupid bribery. We could call it failed bribery. But it is still bribery. And of course, whether there's going to be any legal repercussions remains to be seen. I am really disappointed that we're not seeing both sides put their foot down and say, this is not democracy.
Right, and because corruption is everywhere in our politics, it's unclear as to whether or not Michael Cohen even committed a crime here. But if he did commit a crime, you have to imagine that Robert Mueller would use that to his advantage, because he already has Michael Cohen at the palm of his hand, right? If he's using,
you would think,
with the Russia stuff and the Stormy Daniels stuff, he could use this as leverage too. Maybe that would cause Michael Cohen to flip on Trump.
That's increasingly the discussion. I mean, we've known that Cohen has been a likely indictee of Robert Mueller for a while. And at this point, the questions are, Number one, is this something Mueller is concerned with? We believe the answer is yes, because we know Cohen spoke to both AT&T and Novartis months ago. So clearly Cohen knows about this. Question two, is there a point at which Michael Cohen's supposed love of Donald Trump, just thinking he's just the best guy out there, is there a point at which it would become too much pressure even on Cohen, and Cohen does flip? I don't know the answer to that, but it is something that we may soon learn. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. And boy, do we have a good program for you today. Today's episode of the program is made possible in part by CoinSchedule, a listing site for initial coin offerings that's been around since 2016. It was actually one of the first websites to show listing information about ICOs. You can look them up by name, type of industry, the ICO's end date, the start date. And it also gives each ICO a score using an algorithm based on dozens of parameters to help you determine how trustworthy an ICO is. Very important to be able to filter out scams. So for example, whether or not the identities of the ICO team are verified is listed by CoinSchedule. Whether the ICO has a white paper, these types of parameters. And CoinSchedule also doesn't try to make predictions about the long-term success or failure of any ICO project, since this is often impossible. What they do instead is provide users with a combined score of how much operational risk CoinSchedule sees for each different ICO, so that you can know when you've got to be careful with ICOs that have a low rating. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've put a link to the CoinSchedule website at the top of the video description. And of course, nothing in CoinSchedule should be considered personalized investment advice. ICOs are risky. People should do their own research and make their own decisions.